Dear guests, welcome to the last sessions of today. In this session, we are together with three researchers. Professor Dr. Felix PIRSON, the first director of the German Archaeology Institute in Istanbul, Dr. Philip Bess, affiliation with the German Archaeological Institute in Istanbul, and Dr. Yun Yang from Freie University, Berlin. I know this is the last section of the day and the time is going faster. I am giving the word to the Professor Dr. PIRSON first for his first presentation. New archaeological survey in the rural landscapes of the Pergamon microregion. Thanks.
Yeah, iyi akşamlar, and thanks a lot for having the opportunity of speaking in this very interesting webinar, also in the name of my colleagues Mete AKSAN, Güler ATEŞ, Bernhard LUDWIG, and Murat TOZAN. Tonight, I will give you a brief impression about our survey work, which is part of a much larger project called the Transformation of the Pergamon microregion between Hellenism and Roman Imperial period. This is an interdisciplinary project which looks on Pergamon itself and on its surrounding. And the main disciplines are, as shown in the graph here, archaeology, Bauforschung, this is architectural history, and physical geography. And these three disciplines, together with many other disciplines from the humanities and from sciences, look at subjects such as human-environment interaction, rural and urban physiognomies, social ecology, demography, and economy. And we are doing this in the context of the so-called microregion of Pergamon, which is basically the upper western basin of the Buccal Chai, in antiquity the Caicos, with Pergamon and in its center. And it's not just a geographical entity, but it's an area of particularly dense communication, networking on various levels, such as economy, religion, symbolic functions. But the microregion, of course, is not closed up, but is in itself part of larger regional and interregional networks. One of the starting questions of our project was, and this is particularly important for the transformation between the Hellenistic period, so the last 3 centuries BC, and the Roman Imperial period, the first 3 centuries CE, is the question how the transformation of the city of Pergamon influenced the entire landscape. Because in the Roman Imperial age, the city of Pergamon, which first was located on the city hill, doubled its size. And it's not only doubled its size, but huge new building projects, such as the amphitheater, which you can see here, were executed. And such a change in the urban development, of course, meant a need for lots of new resources, material, humans from the countryside. Questions arise, how were all these people fed, for instance? And so one of our starting questions is, how did the change in Pergamon, the big enlargement of the city, influence the microregion in the sense of economy, resources, settlement structure, etc.? So the aim of the new surveys in the microregion are manifold, and we are actually talking about 3 survey projects. One is an archaeological survey in the rural landscape. I will talk about this. Then we have a geographical survey from our colleagues from Berlin and Izmir from Ege University. My colleague Yun Yang will talk about this. And then finally, there is an archaeological survey.
Sorry, Professor PIRSON, can you a little closer, please, to microphone, because there's some words, the voice is low.
Okay, I hope.
Yeah.
Is it better now?
Yeah, this is better now. Thanks. Sorry.
Thank you for the information. And the third survey project is on Pitane Çandarlı, focusing on a pottery production area. Concerning the rural survey, of course, we cannot cover the entire micro-region, but we have to select certain areas which are marked here in red. And these areas are typical for various landscape scenarios in the area. And we have started in 2019 here and worked 2020 here. And I will give you some insights in our first works and results. Concerning the methods, we are basically doing what all of us are doing in surveys: systematic field work, 2.5 meter spacing between the walker. The orientation is done by handheld GPS, and the tracking of all the data is done by tablets using the Android app ODK Collect. A very important point is, of course, find statistics. And if we work in areas where, for instance, ancient buildings have been, often there are so many finds that we are not able to collect every potsherd, for instance. And then we are defining counting fields and include the information from these fields in our databases. Of course, we work with digital satellite images, remote sensing data, and so on before we start with the field work. But a particularly important source are the oral informations from the local inhabitants. And you see here our colleague Murat TOZAN speaking to the inhabitants of our survey areas and collecting their information systematically and integrating it also in our database. This is of great help, of course. Well, we started in 2019 in 2 areas, and I will talk now first about the so-called Tekedere Vadisi, which you can see here. Here is the modern village of Tekedere, and here is the Wadi, the valley. Again, in a map, and the yellow parts is the area which we were able to cover by our field walking. And here I show you the pottery data, and it becomes already quite clear that there are several concentrations of pottery. And if you look at the concentration of tiles, you get a similar image. We had lots of finds of clay pipes in the entire valley, most of them dating from the Ottoman period, and they give us very, very interesting insights into the complicated water management of this particular valley. These are information which can also be used, of course, for understanding the water management in older periods. At the end, what we had is one big main settlement of, let's say, the archaeological periods, starting in the Bronze Age and running up to, let's say, the Byzantine period. And parallel to this settlement, there were 2 smaller settlements from the Hellenistic Roman period. After was given up, the settlement continued at Yukarı-Kışlak, then at Aşağı-Kışlak, finally in Eski Tekedere, and from the 1950s onwards in modern Tekedere. So we were able to reconstruct 4,000 years of settlement history in Tekedere. This is a huge time span, and it's the same time span, exactly the same time span we have at the city hill of Pergamon. So it's a very interesting confrontation we can do between urban and rural settlement developments here. We are not only focusing on entire geographical units, such as the valley, but also on some single find spots, which we knew from older surveys. One is here a big architectural unit close to the ancient city of Teutrania. And here we have very good geophysical data, which shows a dense concentration of buildings in a very limited area, probably a huge agricultural production unit or something like that. And if you cover the geophysics with the data from the pottery survey, it shows very well that the architecture and the pottery concentration are more or less at the same places. The same goes for the concentration of the tiles, for instance. It's still difficult to interpret this building, which starts at the 1st century BC and runs at least up to the Seljuk period. So probably many layers from many periods are shown here together. The second or the third area we looked at in 2019 is again a huge site close to the modern village of Boskøy, which is characterized, for instance, by lots of fine ware, but also traces of pottery production for architectural pottery, such as tiles and pipes, but also amphora, and the material dates from the 1st century BC to the 7th century AD. Again, we have geophysical results which point to huge heavy architecture. We have to continue the geophysical prospection there. But one particularly striking feature for this site are architectural remains, not just walls, but also remains of remarkable big and rich marble architecture. And the pediment piece, which I've shown to you, here you have the drawing, we have integrated into a hypothetical reconstruction to give you an idea how big the architecture at this site must have been. And all these various aspects underline the hypothetical interpretation of the site as a huge Roman villa, a very rich Roman villa, which not only was involved in agricultural production, but also in pottery production. And we know that Pergamon had a kind of senatorial elite, so very rich landowners, and perhaps we can locate one of these persons in this place here. I quickly continue, and we are going to the 2020 campaign, and I will concentrate on this area here, which is the Geik Vadise, again, a very different geographical setting, which also serves as an example for the various topographical scenarios we have in our exploration area. We were focusing on this part of the valley where remains of a huge Roman bath complex are located, which we already knew from older surveys. One of our first observations was that the entire area is covered by these strange kind of walls, very hard to interpret if you see them on the field. But after they have been mapped here, it becomes much clearer that they are part of the water management of this particular area. Again, we don't think that they are going back, let's say, to the Roman or the Hellenistic period. They are probably much younger, perhaps from late Byzantine Ottoman period, but they give us very important insights into the water management. The most spectacular find in this area is, of course, the Roman bath building in this area here, a quite huge thermal bath. We have still hot springs there today, and many architectural features are still visible on the surface. I give you some impressions and our still the not yet finished drawings. That's all from this summer. Some further insights into these type of architecture, which we know from Pergamon, but we also know from places such as Alianoi. And there are unfortunately illegal excavations going on also in this area. And one illegal excavation discovered this completely preserved cistern, which we also could document, and which probably forms parts of the thermal bath complex. Since we are always, of course, confronted with systems of settlement units in the rural landscape, we climbed up the hills above the Georgikli Vadese to at least one of the plateaus, the Kavalan Plateau, where we expected to find further ancient remains. And if you look at our two maps, the orange area is the area where we could do intensive field work. And following the distribution of the pottery and the tiles, you see at least that we have at least 1, 2, 3, and 4 concentrations similar in the tiles, where we have to expect settlement units of various sizes. In this case, however, it was not just a settlement of the living, but also a necropolis, which gives us interesting first ideas about the economic and social standards in these seemingly remote rural settlements. In the aerial photograph here, you see the krepis, the round wall of a rather big tumulus of a diameter of 10 meters. And the krepis was built in a very well-made masonry. And this krepis, it's again here, seemed to be the center of a tumulus necropolis, which has to be related to these seemingly very small and simple rural settlements I've shown you in the image before. So we have quite a high standard of population who could afford this kind of tumuli in the rural settlements. And another very important aspect of our research in the Kavalan Plateau are various remains of historic roads and tracks. They are notoriously difficult to date, but they connect the Kavalan Alan with the Georgikli Dere, where we have the center of ancient settlements with the Roman thermal baths, but they also lead again to higher up plateaus, which have been used agriculturally. So step by step, an entire network of the rural settlements, starting from the Bronze Age and going up to the Ottoman period, starts to emerge. Yes, to sum up, we are, of course, very much at the beginning of our research, so I cannot offer you any final results, but it becomes clear that we have a big chronological depth, starting at least in the second millennium BC, in the Middle Bronze Age, and going up to the Ottoman period. We have a particular a huge amount of archaeological data from the Hellenistic and the Roman period. So the focus of our project on the transformation between Hellenistic and Roman period makes sense, but of course we look also on the other periods. And we have a big variety of standards in the rural settlements. We have very simple sites with just a few potsherds and a few tiles on the surface, and not really significant architecture in the geophysics. On the one hand, we have kind of middle-sized places like the main place in the Tekedere Valley, where we have, let's say, a bit more solid architecture, terrace walls, and other features. And we have this amazingly rich sites, such as close to Teutrania and to Bosque, with even with marble architecture in the same kind of dimensions, which you can find also in Pergamon itself. How to interpret this and how to bring all these data together in a socio-ecological modeling of the microregion, and this is the eventual aim of our project. There we have still to wait in order to present you further results. And the results we would like to bring together in this socio-ecological model is not just of the landscape survey, but also of the research we are doing at Pergamon itself, for instance, and the amphitheater, and the results of the surveys my colleague Philip Bees and Xun Yang will present to you now. Thanks for your attention, and since we are at the end of the year, yeni yılınız mutlu olsun. Teşekkür ederim.
I would like to thank you to Professor Dr. Pearson for this presentation. We will take the questions at the end of the sessions. The second speaker is Dr. Philip Bees, and his topic is results from the 2019 and 2020 intensive survey at Çandarlı. Yes, please.
İyi akşamlar. Good evening, dear ladies and gentlemen. We are very pleased to present preliminary results of our intensive survey at Çandarlı in the region of Pergamon. And this is a small survey project which is part of the larger regional survey project that Professor PIRSON has just presented. And this is a small survey project that I'm doing together with my colleague KEWELOH-KALETTA. So you have already seen this map, and our survey is actually at Çandarlı, or ancient Pitane, located right on the coast, about 35 kilometers from Pergamon. And this is a Google Earth image of modern Çandarlı. And what you see in the circle, it's a collection of fields. They are not occupied, and this is the archaeological zone that we have been able to work in, and which you will see throughout this presentation. The reason why a survey is planned, or was planned, and is now completed at Çandarlı goes back to the early 20th century, 1911, when a German scholar, Siegfried Löschke, could carry out excavations on the peninsula. And what he found, so here are some images from his article, which was published in 1912, and here are some of the trenches. And what he found was a production site for Terra a red slip tableware of the Roman period. Here are some of the finds that he discovered and published. And with his finds, Çandarlı, or ancient Pitane, became the very first known production site of terra sigillata in the Eastern Mediterranean. So it also has a bit of historical value in that respect. And most of the presentation we will present some of the results specifically about the local production of terra sigillata at Çandarlı. So here are some examples. So on the left, you see an example of terra sigillata from the city of Pergamon. And on the right, you can see from the publication by John Hayes, some of the shapes or types that were made at Çandarlı. And these are mostly 2nd and 3rd century AD and were widely distributed, specifically in the Aegean area, although we do know finds in Africa and also the Black Sea area, which you can see in this distribution map. So everything in purple represents pottery or terra sigillata that was definitely made in the region of Pergamon and presumably at Çandarlı. And as you can see, most of the purple sites, or the sites in purple where this pottery has been identified, are actually located in the Aegean. But you can also see some finds in modern Israel, southern Turkey, and also in North Africa. So the survey has several objectives. First of all, it's to identify and document the macroscopic and also compositional properties of the local manufacture of terra sigillata. Then to reevaluate, based on our new finds, the existing, and seen an example of some of these types, the existing typological, chronological, decorative repertoire. Also based on using our finds to identify and reconstruct the laboratoire, the whole production sequence, whereby we use ceramic ecology as a interpretive framework or model to understand our finds. And finally, this will, later stage of the project, also to understand settlement and workshop context in which the pottery was produced, and to also better understand the role of Çandarlı, ancient Pitane, as a harbor and production site in the distribution and also import of goods to other places. So a little bit about methodology. We basically work in very small squares of 10 by 10 meters, which we then also subdivide into strips of 2 by 10 meters. And each member of our team walks one of these lines. And first of all, we start by assessing the visibility. This, of course, can be a lot of vegetation, there can be rubbish, and so on. So we determine a percentage of visibility for each of these lines. And then we start clicker counting. Again, this is a fairly traditional approach in survey archaeology. What we do is first determine the artifact density. So we count all artifacts within each strip of 2 by 10 meters. Then we count all fragments of slag and related artifacts. So the actual production evidence for local production. We count architectural fragments. And in the case of Çandarlı, this is mostly tile, but we do find some marble fragments as well. And then finally, we collect artifacts, again, within each line of 2 by 10 meters. And of course, thereby, the focus is on artifacts that are related to ceramic production. We find mostly pottery from other periods as well, so pre-Roman and Ottoman period. And we also collect these. We try to, because there are a lot of artifacts on the surface, we try to focus mostly on diagnostic fragments. Where possible, we try to also already fabric decoration and surface treatment. When this is done, each grid is walked by one person in a zigzag line, and this has to do with, and this is also again a known phenomenon in survey archaeology, that dependent on the person, the time of day, the climate or the weather, the vegetation, this helps to look at the survey area from a different angle. And this was actually our first day in the field this year, and the start of a new field. So this is actually how it looks like in real life, you could say. So we have already started collecting some artifacts here, as you can see. So again, coming back to the archaeological zone, on the left, a little bit more of a close-up. Just 1 second. Again, on the left, the Google Earth image with the archaeological zone, and on the right, a drone photo with the different fields that we have surveyed. You can see the survey grids here included. So again, in 2019, we managed to complete the first two fields. So the field 1 and 2. And this year we specifically focused on finishing the survey. So again, we cannot present too much results. This is preliminary. Next year we hope to complete the study of the artifacts. So in the end, we surveyed 7 fields. This is the field where Siegfried Löschke excavated in 1911. And in the end, we decided to not survey this field in detail. You can actually already see on this picture that there's some rubbish. There was some dogs running around. And in some artifacts to get a general impression of the fields. So before we come to the actual pottery production evidence from Çandarlı, we would just like to show you some finds that are sometimes Roman, sometimes they're pre or post-Roman. So we find, for instance, the occasional coin, some terracotta figurine fragments, a loom. This year we were quite pleased to find this beautiful archaic shirt. We had not yet identified archaic pottery. And as you can see, this is part of the Sphinx. So the head here is the wing, or one of the wings at least. And we find, as I already mentioned, we do find marble and stone fragments. For instance, a white marble fragment from a statue or relief, agricultural tools, equipment, part of a column with fluting, you can see here. And we find marble pieces, in this case, marbles from different parts of Greece and the Aegean. So to come back to the main aim of the survey, or the Pitana survey, is to document the local production, local production. And this, of course, starts, in our case, with documenting fabric, so the glaze that were used, or glaze that was used, and also the types, the shapes that were made. Here you can see some examples of microscope photographs of shirts that we are certain were locally made at Çandarlı. And so this is something we find very often, this kind of clay, very pale clay, whitish, also quite common. So this, in our opinion, at the moment, characterizes the local Pergamon production. And here you see some photos of finds. Again, these are pieces that we think were locally produced Çandarlı. So on the top here and here, you can see it's very beautiful, especially on this piece. It's a very nice red slip, real terra sigillata. So these are early Roman imperial. These other 3 pieces, they are a little bit later, probably 4th, 5th century AD. So to come back to this image, this was the, on the right, this was the, for a long time, this has been the traditional view of pottery, kind of vessels that were made at Pitana. So again, larger and smaller bowls, cups, especially. And in recent years, it was identified that at Çandarlı, there was also a later production phase. And this is what you see here. These 2 pieces are from the recent survey at Çandarlı, and these are probably to be dated to the 4th, 5th centuries. The ones on the right, I mentioned earlier, are 2nd, 3rd century. So we can now see Çandarlı making pottery probably for about 4 to 5 centuries, starting sometime in the middle, first half of the 1st century AD, and probably continuing into definitely into the 5th century, probably towards the 2nd half or the later 5th century AD. And this is quite interesting as it fits new ideas that several places in Western Turkey, including Foça, for instance, were making tableware pottery into the late Roman period. So now we would like to present some of the artifacts that are definitely related to the local pottery production. What you see here, it's not to scale, but we have found a lot of these small clay discs. They're about 2 centimeters in diameter, which is quite consistent. And these we call spacer discs. These, of course, in the next slides, they will help us to understand how pottery was made. So we find fragments with impressions of these discs. Sometimes they are fused with the actual vessel. In this case, something went very wrong, so all the slip has disappeared, and only the impression of the disc has remained. What these were used for is to separate vessels in the kiln. So when vessels were made and they had dried, they would of course be fired. They were put in a kiln, and in order to have the perfect or a very good circulation of all the energy from burning the fuel, and they would put these small clay discs within each vessel, and then the next one into it. And in this case, the entire surface, or almost the entire surface, the vessel would be exposed to the heat from burning fuel, so the vessel would get this very nice red color. So here are some more images. And this makes us always very happy. Such finds as for local production. What you see here are images of what we call vessel wasters. So these fragments have been exposed for too long to too high temperatures. What happens is that the clay starts to melt, basically. And the image in the top right, this is probably our best example. You can quite easily recognize shapes, or at least profiles of vessels here. And here you see a base. This was a stack of vessels, so one into the other, that was overfired and had begun to melt, and they all fused together. And this is what was thrown away. It was rubbish, chup. But this is just perfect evidence to document local production of pottery, but also what kind of shapes they were making. Some other artifacts that we can, or probably can, associate with the local production is a possible fragment of a kiln, possible fragments of actual turning wheels or kick wheels. Of course, by this time, a lot of the pottery was wheel made, so you had to have a turning wheel installation, and we found several of these fragments, which specifically at this site we think could be used as turning or kick wheels. On the bottom, you see this green-gray chunk of molten clay, kiln slag, which is basically an accumulation of molten clay from what we also found are these fragments. Again, you can see the gray-green appearance, indicating that it was exposed to very high temperatures. What you can also see are these lines, one like this. Also, on this one you can see this line and this line. In the beginning, we couldn't really figure out what this was, but we are now almost certain that this was some kind of mud or brick, clay that was smeared on the inside of the kiln. And this is a picture from the mid-20th century, where you can see the smearing clay onto the inside of the kiln. The reason why they did this was probably mostly to protect the kiln imagine that firing for 1 or 2 days, there's a lot of energy that's released, and you want to protect your kiln. This is a investment. This is quite valuable, and you want to reuse it several times. And perhaps it was also done to as some kind of insulation, to create a layer to keep more energy in the kiln. In other words, to make the firing more efficient. So we mentioned earlier that in 2019 and 2020, we have mostly focused on. We cannot present too many results at this point. But what we can do is already present the distribution of some of these production evidence. So again, we see here these small clay discs, and here you see a map of our 7 fields with the distribution of these small clay discs. This is not very easy to interpret yet. We can see quite a big concentration in this field. We can also see quite some empty areas. But when we look at these green-gray chunks of clay, it becomes quite clear. So what we see is very dense concentrations in the middle of the archaeological zone. It becomes a little bit less in this area, and also here. There's not so much here. Here it is very dense. And this field, there's hardly anything. It's almost empty of these artifacts, which of course seems to be very interesting. Not easy to interpret at this point. We definitely need more data for this. But these are maps to show you the kind of information that we collect and illustrate to help us understand how the local production was also organized at the peninsula. So based on our survey in 2019 and 2020, our field observations, and also some of the artifacts that we have studied, we are currently working with these observations. So we have a classical early Hellenistic or perhaps Hellenistic concentration of pottery right here. This is the highest point of the archaeological zone. So from here to here, it goes up. Quite interesting. We have another concentration of Augustan or Claudian, so very early Roman imperial pottery in this case. The field that I've just shown you, where there's hardly any production evidence, there's a lot of common pottery. And of course, the main focus of our survey is the local production of pottery. As you've seen in the previous distribution maps, there are dense concentrations of artifacts that are directly related to the production of pottery. Here, and also in the walls or the field boundaries, we also find a lot of stones, but also we find a lot of production evidence, such as in this field boundary between these 2 fields. Now, it's too early to be very certain about what this means. The geophysical surveys, which were done in 2015 and 2017, in this area, they showed up, they identified one anomaly that could be a kiln. So which is this area. This is an image of this anomaly, the possible kiln. And hopefully next year, when we have studied and processed more of our artifacts that we have collected, we will hope to better understand the relationship between this possible kiln, but also the distribution of all this production evidence. So the question, of course, is, are we in this archaeological zone, are we surveying the area where the workshops and the kilns stood, or do we have to look for these in another part of the peninsula? So to conclude, some preliminary observations. So first of all, we have found which goes back to the Bronze Age, all the way to the Ottoman period. So again, a long period of occupation or activity, although we do not know yet if this was continuous. There is a considerable variety in the Hellenistic and Roman imported amphores, which are coming from different parts of the Mediterranean, but also the Black Sea. Again, the main focus of our survey, the local production, began in the first half, mid-1st century AD, and continued definitely into the 5th, perhaps even the early 6th century AD. Then in the 6th and 7th centuries, and this of course relates to the previous point, we haven't really been able to identify local products. What we do find are tablewares and cookingwares, which we assume at the moment are coming from Phocaea, Focha. Of course, it's very interesting to think about what is the relation between local production and when this ended. And we have imported pottery, presumably from Phocaea, during the very late Roman period, the 6th and 7th centuries. You've seen during this presentation also elements of the manufacturing process. So the kiln slag, the techniques they used to make pottery and to fire it. Of course, this is also very interesting. Think about regional traditions in pottery manufacture. So the different kinds of elements we've seen, for instance, these small discs, these spacer discs. We don't find them everywhere where they were making terra sigillata, which is of course quite interesting. So what does this mean? And again, the last point, we've seen that the archaeological zone, or parts of the archaeological zone, has very dense concentrations of production-related artifacts. Again, what does this mean? Are we surveying the workshop zones? Are we surveying the zones of the production waste? Again, we mentioned this needs a little bit more research. And now we would like to thank you for your attention. Thank you.
I would like to thank Dr. Best for this presentation. We had some problems about the connection. I think sometimes the voice was cutting, like when we are testing, but we couldn't fix it because it's, I think, because of the connection. But sure. I would like to thank you for this presentation, and thank you very much. And the last speaker of this day is Dr. Jun Yang. Her topic is Human Environments Interactions in the Pergamon Microregion, New Results from Geoarchaeological Field Works in 2019 and 2020. Yes, please, Dr. Yang.
Okay. Sorry. So thanks our moderator, Dr. Serkan, and the two wonderful presentations before, and dear audience from the webinar. I'm Xunyang from Federal University Berlin, and I'm so honored that I will represent the Physical Geography group to show our fresh new results from the last 2 years geoarchaeological field work in the Pergamon microregion about the human environment interactions during the late Holocene. So Pergamon microregion is mainly belongs to the Bakhcha and the Madha catchment in the North Aegean Anatolia. This is a tectonically active area, but main geomorphological structures have developed before the Holocene. So the western lower Bakhcha plain is one of the most important rural areas in the Pergamon microregion, as have been indicated in the former two presentations. So some fruitful geoarchaeological research in the last 10 years by Schneider, Zenikas, and so on, and indicated local increased morphodynamics during the late Holocene, such as the atolls near the Geikini Valley and the sites in the western Lower Baktria Plain and the harbor city of Ilaya. But detailed and systematic paleoenvironmental studies around the Untitled Mountains here and the urban city of the Pergamon are almost lacking. Besides, the flooding process in the plain is still unclear. So in the last 2 years, after archaeological surveys, we conducted 3 geographical and sedimentary case studies in the western Lower Baktria Plain. One is in the Tegdela Valley and the alluvial fan. These were continuous settlements from the Bronze Age. And another one is in the Pergamon alluvial fan and the Chopluk site, where the archaeology groups has found the Zoma house and the indicated there is an extra urban area of the ancient Pergamon. So these 2 researches, we aim to reconstruct the past morphodynamics in relation to the settlement history. And the third one is in the western Lower Baktria Plain around the Aralık Tepe. We aim to reconstruct the paleoenvironment of the plain, for example, in relation to the ancient root network with least flood possibility. This work will continue to next year. So today I just talk about the first 2 studies. The Pergamon Valley and the alluvial fan is located in the Untitled Mountains, while the Tegdela alluvial fan and the Cat Valley is located in the Untitled Mountains. Sorry, this is the Kalak Mountains. So from the map, we can see the Pergamon alluvial fan is much bigger than Tegdela, and the geological background is much more complex than the Tegdela. So from the first presentation, we already know that the settlement history in Tegdela has an almost uninterrupted continuity from probably the Bronze Age to present day. So our questions related about the human settlement history are: which landscape features made the Tegdela Valley attractive to the settlers, to the Asian settlers, and how did the settlement history and landscape development interact? Were the older settlements abandoned because of landscape deterioration? So we'll use sediment analysis in the upper mid-valley and on the alluvial fan, and discuss with the sediment analysis in an archaeological context. So we have 3 outcrops in the upper mid-valley here, and these green dots indicate the former mentioned archaeological sites. And we have 5 quarries located into the alluvial fan here. So the cross profile across the alluvial fan indicated the locations of our quarrying locations here. The Tech 4 is more close to the proximal fan, And the text 6 is more or less into the boundary of the alluvial fan and the floodplain area from the bauxite. So we, of course, measured some parameters of the physical and the chemical features of the sediment sequences. So we take two cores as examples. So this is the take 4-2, which is more close to the proximal of the fan. So we can, from the field observation and the sediment analysis and this core, we can see at the top, the sediments has been agriculturally disturbed. From the top to the bottom, coarse sand and fan loamy sediments are interlayering, and the organic matter content and the electricity conductivity also shows similar variations. So we propose there were at least 2 main cycles of low to high energy changes. And here we can see at the middle lower part maybe some overbank sediments from the bauxite can be interbedded. As for the take 5, we can see the coarse alluvial deposits are less than the take 4-2, but the finer alluvial sediments are much more than that. And the lower part, the alluvial fan deposits are interbedded with more floodplain deposits from the bauxite. Even though we are not 100% sure about this part, but still we can see some alluvial some fluvial features from the Pergamon, from the bauxite plain. So the stratigraphic of the 4 sediment cores from the Tegdela alluvial fan indicated that the sediments from the proximal areas have more alluvial fan sediments from the valley, and there are some phases of high and low morphodynamics. But in the middle areas, fan deposits are interbedded with bauxite alluvial deposits, and the distal part, more bauxite plain, floodplain deposits are intruded, and there's a thick oxbow deposits can be found. And in the upper mid valleys, we have some soil. One soil formation was dated in Middle Byzantine time, and some colluvial deposits after that dated during the pre and the early Ottoman. So maybe this can be linked to the clay pipes mentioned by Felix. So for the human-environment interactions in the Tegdela Valley, we preliminarily assume that there are some high morphodynamics, like high fluvial process and periodical flood events, probably during the early mid-Holocene, when the climate is wetter than today. And there are increased morphodynamics in the alluvial fan and valley during the late Holocene, could potentially be impacted by human activities, particularly during the Hellenistic period, when this area might be largely populated. And this is could be the similar trend to the whole Western plain. And from the soil formation, maybe some short-time landscape stability can be found. And for the reason why the older settlements has been abandoned, that could be linked to the local increased morphodynamics triggered by, for example, population growth or natural hazards, for example, earthquake or something else. And then let's move to the Pergamon alluvial fan and Chopluk site. It's located into the downslopes of the ancient Pergamon Acropolis and the lower city. Pottery production area is lower and the upper stream here. And the extra urban part, there is a tumulus in this taper has been newly started. And the same area we find this Chopluk site, which is amazing because there's a Roman house and some abundant ceramics has been newly found. So we try to use some old map and history reports, and we use them to discuss our sediment analysis to try to answer these questions. These first questions about the sediment history. So what's the sediment history of the Pergamon alluvial fan, where the morphodynamics directly related to the urban development on the Acropolis. So this is one of the old maps. We can see the Chopluk site is located here. And when we compared these maps with the current situations, it's clear that during the late 19th century, the Pergamon River present like a branded stream course, and this course and the Castle River is somehow separated with the Pergamon River, but now this river has been more or less straightened, and this Castle River has merged into the Pergamon River, probably because of to try to control the flood. And the Chopluk site is into the middle east part of the Pergamon alluvial fan, right downstream of these two rivers confluence. This site is actually a gravel pit here, so we are lucky we can access all these outcrops and different elevation or orientation here and here. So we collected some ceramic fragments for preliminary dating, and we studied 4 outcrops surrounding the Roman house, and they are somehow provide the 3-dimensional view of this sediments into this site, and they can be correlated with each other. So these are some photos of these outcrops. So how can we correlate with of these layers? So we find there's massive gravels, and above that we can usually find a massive silt or fan sand layers. So we use it as the master layer to correlate with different areas, and also use absolute elevation data, so we can link them with the absolute elevation. After detailed description and correlation, and compared with the published sediment sequences from Geikini and the Yagma paper, so we roughly interpret the sediment sequences as at the bottom there's a pre-Holocene massive gravel layer, and above that we can find 20 centimeters thick of panel soil, and this is only partly found above this gravel, and a ceramic tube or pipe with the diameter of 50 centimeters was found of this panel soil layer, and above that there's this master layer we talked about before. This layer is massive silt and fan sand, only partly eroded, so we can use it for comparison. This silt fan layer represents overbank sediments, and above that there's a secondary channels or sheet floods, because there's some gravels and coarse sand layering together. So, and but this secondary channel sediments could possibly disturbed by the modern surface of this finer topsoil sediments. The preliminary dating results of these ceramics indicated they are from the late Hellenistic to the early Roman Imperial period. Besides that, we also found this massive silt layer covered or filled within the Roman house. This could be the part of the destruction phases of the house, or it could indicate the high morphodynamics happened during or after Roman period. So when we integrated from the stratigraphical and the dating results, even though we don't have a very clear story of this area, but some highlands can be indicated. So this erosional discontinuity could happen from the Pleistocene to late Holocene. So there's a quite large gap between these two times, and this diverse panel environments during the late Holocene, and landscape stability could occasionally happen, and especially increased or peak morphodynamics during the Hellenistic to Roman Imperial period, and after or during the Roman period, floods could possibly occur occasionally. For these sediments, how could that happen? So there are a lot of potential drivers that could trigger these sediment sequences. They are very complex. For example, like the social, economical aspects, or the natural depositional process. So, but now we are not very sure about the real reasons. So for these two preliminary geoarchaeological case studies in the Pergamon microregion, we suggest the sediment dynamics of these two areas are different. The Pergamon case seems much more complex with varying erosion time and events, which could be triggered by multiple potential factors. Because dating results are still in preparation, so we hope we can have more complete and stories about the human-environment interactions in the valleys and the alluvial fan. So thank you for your attention and look forward to the discussion. Teşekkürler.
I would like to thank to the Dr. Yang for her presentation. Now we are end of our sessions. For the question and the answers parts, I read some questions in the chat parts. Now we will take the questions on the screen. The first question is from Ulaş Yılmaz to Alex PIRSON. Is there any website that we can follow this research?
Evet, tabii ki Ulaş Bey. Web sayfamız var. Ben adres tekrar chat entegre edeceğim, yazacağım. Çalışmazsa siz sadece Transpark Micro Google'da aramak gerekiyor. Ondan sonra hemen bulabilirsiniz. Ama adres şimdi yazıyorum chat içerisinde. Teşekkür ederim.
Thank you very much for the answer and the question. And the next question from Tuğberk Elseven to Alex PIRSON again. I have a question. What do you think about the digital reconstruction?
Tabii ki dijital rekonstrüksiyon modern arkeoloji için gerçekten çok önemli ve biz çok kullanıyoruz. Biz genelde çok sade rekonstrüksiyonlar kullanıyoruz. O zaman beyaz, siyah pek fazla renkli şeyler bana göre mesela computer game estetik için çok uygun ama bilimsel rekonstrüksiyon için o kadar iyi değil. Sadece bir örnek gösterdim ama biraz bilimsel fantazi için çok önemli. Ya? Ve bizim rekonstrüksiyonlar çok iyi destek veriyor. Bunun için gerçekten önemli ve umarım ki birkaç yıl sonra çok daha iyi bir rekonstrüksiyon hem Antik Pergamon hem Antik Pergamon'un çevresi gösterebiliriz.
Thank you very much. The next question from Murat Çekilmez. Thank you, Mr. Bess. We found lots of, actually it's not a question, he wants to add some informations. They found lots of similar ceramics at Myrina and Grineon.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Çekilmez, for your suggestion or comment, actually. Yes, this is, we didn't really mention it in our presentation, but of course, now we can add Çandarlı, Pitane to the model of regional production of late Roman C, together with Grineon, Phocaea, Ephesus. There was another one at the moment, my apologies. No, that's absolutely very interesting, and really it would be very interesting if we can meet in the near future to exchange ideas, perhaps also show material from definitely from Çandarlı. We would like to pay you if that's possible to have a look at your reach from Myrina and Grineon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much again. Next question comes from Irfan Akça. My question is to Mr. Bess and Mr. PIRSON. I couldn't see which geographical methods were used in the studies. Could you give some more details? Which geographical methods?
Geophysical methods.
Geophysical.
Yes. Well, also in Pitane Çandarlı, we started with geomagnetics, and then we made control measurements with radar. The site, unfortunately, is not very good for geophysical prospection. Generally, we apply, yes, as a magnetics, radar, electrics, sometimes also seismic techniques. So let's say a variation of geophysical methods. But the results we have shown were, in most cases, geomagnetic, and in case of the Bosköy site, there were also some images from geoelectric.
Thank you very much. And the next question, do we have any questions? I think we have more questions.
There's one question to Philip, I see, by
Yes.
Inan Kopchuk.
Yes, I had already noted this in the comment section. Let me just have another quick look. Yes, so definitely we know, of course, that Eastern Plata Sea was made at Çandarlı. I mean, this is of course, the time of Siegfried known, and we now have very clear evidence for also local production of late Roman sea. So these are some of the profiles that we showed that belong to the 4th century. The thing is that so far we have not identified evidence for local production of Plata or Redstone that certainly dates to the 6th or 7th century. And we are working with the idea that local production stopped late 5th, early 6th, perhaps at the latest, and that from that time onwards, because occupation continued, we know that, and that from that time during the 6th and 7th centuries, let's say that the tablewares were, we think, imported from Bulgaria, which is not too far, and of course, as we perhaps too quickly mentioned, this is a very interesting thing in relation to the local production. Why did it stop? I mean, if occupation continued, why not continue production of pottery? This is again a question that we cannot really answer at the moment, again, because we haven't looked at pottery yet. So hopefully in the future. But this is no, we have definitely evidence for local production of tablewares in the 4th and 5th centuries. So continuation.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Is it finished? Or
yes, sorry.
Oh, okay. The last question for Dr. Young. Was it possible to extract pollen from the coring in Tekkedere? How did we work the coring?
So actually, we already sampled the sediments for pollen. We hope we can have this data, but since now we can't take the samples from Turkey to somewhere else, so we try to find some co-authors or co-institute in Turkey, so we can have cooperation with them to do some pollen analysis there.
Okay. Thank you very much. I would like to thank again to all our participants this evening and very valuable informations about their research. For now, this evening, our sessions and today is over. But tomorrow at 12:30, we will be here again. So hope to meet again in here. Bye for now. Yarın saat 12:40'da programımız devam ediyor. Bugünlük programımızı burada sonlandırıyoruz. Yarın hepinize görüşmek üzere. İyi akşamlar.
İyi akşamlar. Teşekkür ederim.
İyi akşamlar.
Thank you very much.